last week and yesterday we've continued to talk about poems. We've talked about how poems, can rhyme, but they don't always have to rhyme. Yesterday I asked you to write me a poem that creates a visualization. Today, our lesson on poems is about poems using feelings, strong feelings, and details from your life. Right now, we're going through a situation that none of us have ever been a part of. None of us have ever dealt with, and this is definitely a major part of everybody's life. When you're writing a poem or any story, you really want to try to bring out some feelings. A couple strategies that you should use when you're writing poems. One is, and we talked about this last week, is finding a big moment, a big topic from your life, and then taking that big topic and trying to turn it into a small topic or a small moment, a detail, or an object that it holds some type of feeling or gives you something that you want to express. Another thing is that you can look with poet's eyes and see ordinary things in a new way. And finally, you can experiment by your line breaks. Today, I want our focus to be on our feelings. How do you feel? You're going to write a poem based on your feelings. Some of you might be happy, some of you might be sad, some of you might be mad or angry, and that's okay. But I wrote down a poem, and honestly, I just wrote it down. Just sitting here, I just wrote it down. Bear with me because it's something that I said, okay, let's write a poem. Let's write it based on my feelings, and at this given time, this is how I felt, and I titled it Unknown because we are kind of currently living in a time of unknown. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how long that we're going to be, confined into our houses and not being able to go places. So on the board, I wrote 4 lines just because I want to make sure that you can see what I wrote, and then I finished it off on my little marker board right here. I'll show you guys. So I'm not just making this up. I did write this. So my poem is based on feelings of unknown, the uncertainty. I don't know what's going to happen, and so this is where my writing took me today in my poem titled Unknown. In this time of uncertainty, the feeling of unknown, I find comfort in my family, for we have grown. We may not go places, sure we miss others' faces. However, we know this is right, even when it is daylight. It is very sad, missing out on things that used to make me glad. I know this shall pass. When, I might ask? This is the feeling of unknown. So there you go, have it, guys. I wrote my poem based on the uncertainty of when will all this sickness and all this virus, when will it disappear, and when will we get to return back to normal? But please today write a poem based on your feelings and try to express those feelings. Hopefully you've got out of my poem, The Unknown, is that I'm just feeling uncertain. But even though I'm uncertain, I still do have the comfort of my family here with me that it makes it okay. And again, like I said in my poem, this too shall pass. But I want you to understand that I wrote that based on my feelings of how I felt at this given moment. So please continue to write your journal entries and then write a poem that really expresses your feelings. As we conclude writing, let's talk about what you need to do today. You have your journal entry, just like we've been doing, and then you've got to write a poem, but it really is focusing on expressing that feeling, the feeling that you're feeling in that moment. It can be happy, it can be sad, it can be anger, it can be, like me, the uncertainty, being unsure. But please, when you write that, let those feelings do the talking. So 2 things in writing, journal entry and a poem. In math yesterday, we talked about measuring. I told you I did not have a ruler with me. You could use a ruler if you had one at home, or you could use a tape measure. Today we're actually going to skip the application problems because on Google Forms your problem or your questions that you're going to answer are actually going to be some things that I talked about yesterday and as well as what I talk about today. So please listen because you are going to have a few questions based off of yesterday and today's lesson. When you measure using a centimeter ruler, you have 30 centimeters on your ruler. When you measure in inches, your ruler has 12 inches. Now we talked about conversions, how one ruler, 12 inches, equal a foot. And then we talked about how 3 feet would equal a yard. And then we took that and converted how many inches would equal a yard. So we had to take 12 plus 12, which is 24. And then because it's 3 feet, we had to take 12 more. So 24 plus 12 was 36. And 36 inches equal a yard. So let's go over that again. 12 inches equal a foot, 3 feet equal a yard, 36 inches equal a yard. You might want to remember that. Now, today for our math, I'm not going to ask you guys to go and measure because some of you may simply not have a ruler. So definitely trying to teach measuring without rulers or measuring without being in class can pose to be a challenge because if you don't have the appropriate materials, so how can you measure? If you do have a ruler, if you do have a tape measure, please just make sure that you are measuring to the nearest inch, to the whole inch. Today, I have drew up a smaller ruler. Now, it's not a 12-inch ruler. This particular ruler that I drew is only got 5 inches because of how big I wanted to make it so you could see it on the video. Now, when we are drawing line segments or when we are measuring, we want to start wherever 0 begins. Now, if your ruler does not have 0, then you would start at the very edge of the ruler. In particular, on this ruler, I did put a 0 line. So each long line represents a whole inch. So this first one, it doesn't represent anything. That's 0. That's my starting point. And then I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then this one, if I wanted to count it, would be 6. But I don't have room for the number. When you look at a ruler or a tape measure, you midway through the halfway point, there's usually a little bit of a tick mark. And that is your half. So this is half an inch. This is 1.5 inch, 2.5 inch. This one right here is 3.5, 4.5, 5.5. But today we're only focusing on going to the next whole inch. Let's say I wanted to draw a line segment of 2 inches. I would come up here and I would put a dot at 0. And then I would put a dot at 2. Now, if I was using a ruler, I would try to make sure I have as straight a line as possible. But because my ruler is a marker, I would possibly erase it as I try to use it. So I'm just going to try to draw the best line that I can that is straight. Now, obviously, that's a little crooked, but you can see that that line starts at 0 and goes to 2 inches. So I would tell you that that is a 2-inch line. A line that is 5 inches, I would come over to 5, put a dot, because these are line segments, okay? I want them, when I say a segment, it means I have a dot at 0 and a dot at 5. If I don't put a dot to make a line segment, then that means that the line actually just continues to go. So in math, when we want to put a line segment, we got to put 2 dots, one at the beginning and one at the end. So here's the 0. I put a dot at the 5, and I'm going to draw as straight as possible. Again, I'm freehanding, so it's not the most straight, but you get the idea. Remember, when you are measuring, you start at 0, and you end at what number you're supposed to go to, and you try to do it as straight as possible. If you're measuring an object, like this marker, for example, you just want to make sure that the tip or the bottom is lined up with 0. I don't want to start over here at the 1 and measure. You could still figure that out, but you got to make sure that if you start at the 1, you count 1 as just 0. So when measuring, just make sure you're at the 0, and you can see that my marker, based on my ruler that I have, is actually over 1 inch long. So it's about 1.5 inches. So if you measure today, make sure that you are measuring to the whole inch. On Google Forms, you're going to have a few questions that you can find the answers to in this video or yesterday's video. It might have something to do with how many inches might equal a foot and conversions of measurement. What do you have to complete for math today? You're going to go to Google Forms, you're going to find the questions that have to deal with measuring and answer those questions on Google Forms. Then you're going to travel over to Zern. You're going to do about 15 minutes of Zern. And then you're going to find your way over to Prodigy. Now, I want you to actually be answering questions and doing the math in Prodigy. You're going to do Prodigy for about 15 minutes. The reason I'm assigning Prodigy is because I can assign measuring within that Prodigy game. We're at our part where it is activity or challenge time. Today, our activity and challenge is going to be art. Now, I am asking you to draw something specific. I have music going. You can hear that in the background a little bit. That is from Walt Disney World. Because my activity for art is to challenge you to draw a Walt Disney character. I don't care what character it is from Walt Disney. It could be The Lion King, Peter Pan, Little Mermaid, Cinderella, Snow White, some of the 7 Dwarfs. It does not matter to me, but your challenge today is drawing a Walt Disney character. Happy drawing, guys.